Alright, today we're working on my wife's 1981 Volkswagen pickup. The water pump gasket's leaking, and I got a lot to take off to get to it. So we gotta take the intake manifold, or intake tube off, the injection pump, the alternator bracket, and the timing belt, just to get to the water pump gasket, which is down there. So first things first, we're going to start with the intake tube. Alright, so the intake tube is off. It was held on with an 8mm, at least on my truck. It might be different for yours. I'm going to take the timing belt cover off next, and these are 10mm. There's one here, supposed to be one here, but mine is missing. Well, maybe there isn't supposed to be one there, but yeah, there's just a couple of these. Okay, so I wasn't totally wrong. There should be more than two. There's at least one more right here, one here as well. With how old these trucks are, though, you'll be lucky if you have all the bolts. Next, I'm going to work on getting the alternator and accessory belt off, and then we'll go for the injection pump. Alright, so my top bolt here was a 14, and my bottom bolt right down here, if you can see it, might be kind of hard, is a 13. But before I go ahead and disconnect this alternator, I'm gonna unhook the battery. Alright, so the alternator's unhooked. This little bolt right here, this nut ended up being a 13, and this is an 8, but obviously this wire broke off, so I'll have to fix that one, put it back in. And then the next thing we gotta do is take the alternator bracket off, but that requires taking the injection belt, or injection pump and timing belt off, and that's gonna be a fun one. So I'll start with the alternator bracket bolts, and then work my way to the injection pump. I should mention that the reason why you have to take the injection pump off is because there are two bolts. One, this one right here, you can't see it, but you can get to it. But this one on the other side, I've tried crow's feet, wrenches, sockets, wobbles. You cannot get to it without removing the injection pump. But all of these look like they should be 13s, so we're gonna go ahead and start popping those off, and then get the engine and injection pump lined up where we need to get them, so the timing is right when we put it back together. Okay, so I got my bolts out for the alternator bracket that I could get to, and I removed this little brace that goes right here. So then I set the engine to top dead center using the crank pulley down there. It's a 19mm right here. Make sure it's not in gear so it doesn't start on you, but if you come over here and look at the transmission, there's a little white line right there. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a line that you line up with a little notch right here. The notch right here, and you line those lines up, and that should mean that the engine is top dead center. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lower timing belt cover off, and then undo the tension on the timing belt and get the injection pump off. Alright, so next I'm going to take the lower timing belt cover off. There's a 10mm right here, and right there in that hole is a 6mm Allen. And then you got to take the crank pulley off, at least the accessory belt part. Okay, so once you remove the crank pulley accessory, or crank accessory pulley, you can easily see that last bolt for the timing cover. And then we'll probably have to remove this pulley as well to get it out, but maybe not. We'll see. Alright, so this pulley's off. The water pump pulley's off. And now the timing cover should slide right up and down. Okay, so I made sure the engine was top dead center. I loosened the tensioner pulley and then cracked this loose with the impact. Now it's pretty stuck. I tried heating it up. It's still pretty warm. But I'm going to go ahead and get the injector lines broken free and start taking the bolts off of the injection pump and work on getting this off. Alright, so I'm not sure where I left off, but I got the injection pump pulley off. I used this little puller from AutoZone, just like a little 2-ton puller, and I now have access to the maybe 2 bolts that are down there on the alternator bracket pulley, or alternator bracket. I also had to undo the injector lines on the front and the back of the injection pump, and we'll get these bolts out here and get to the water pump. So I got the injection pump, or the alternator bracket off and the water pump. You can kind of see where it was leaking, the water pump. This gasket looks, or this O-ring looks pretty well cooked. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up and put back together. Okay, so I cleaned up the area with a Scotch-Brite pad. I got the new O-ring and the water pump bolts. I'm letting them soak so we can get the new gasket in there, and then we're gonna start putting it back together. Alright, so I let this soak overnight and the bolts snapped. I knew that was a possibility, but even with heat and PV blast overnight, they didn't come loose. So luckily Napa had one, so I just put the thermostat on the new one and we're gonna get it put in the truck.